What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're looking at the top 10 best movies of 2021. Like always, I have to say that I haven't seen every single movie in 2021. It's pretty much impossible. I will say I've seen around, I would say close to 100, maybe 90 to 100 range, which I think is a pretty decent amount. But there are a couple that I knew would probably be on this list, but I just haven't seen it. Like West Side Story, Licorice Pizza, Come On, Come On. Like those are movies that I probably really like that would be on this list, but I just never got around to watching them. And for this list, this is not what I think was the best movies of the year. Everyone's list is different. How I watch movies, this list will be about sort of like my favorite movies of the year. And, I take actual filmmaking aspects into account, like the technical aspects. I also try to look for what movie did I enjoy the most, like which movies made me feel the most, which ones did I resonate with more, which ones did I like the story and the characters the best. Pretty much which movies did I walk away from thinking, wow, that was a pretty good freaking movie. And, you guys know I'm also like a Marvel fan, DC fan, so when those movies are done right, and there's a lot of excitement there, they could easily make this list, as you guys will see. So before we go into it, please make sure you like this video. If you guys have been enjoying it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new, and comment down below what was your favorite movie of 2021. But for right now, let's take a look at my personal list of the best movies of 2021. So coming at number 10, I have Titane, the French film that won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. Now, right away, this movie will not be for everyone. For one, it's a French film. For one, it's a body horror film. But honestly, it's probably the craziest movie I've ever seen. The film is bizarre, sort of like disgusting at times, intense. On a filmmaking level, this was amazing. There's some great cinematography in here. The acting from Vincent London was amazing. If it was up to me, he would win the Best Supporting Actor. The director is also Julia Ducournau. You guys may recognize her from her movie Raw, which is sort of turns like a cult classic now. Another sort of like gross movie to watch is a focus on cannibalism. But Titane has a lot of things going for it, besides it being just a really well-made film. The amount of emotions that I felt while watching this, sometimes you have to turn your eyes away. Other times you were so entranced by what was happening on the screen, like hypnotized. And there were other times where it brought some real emotions, thanks to the acting from Vincent London and Agatha Russell. And I would explain the story, but like I said, there's so much in here. It's a story about, this girl's a serial killer. She had a titanium plate in her head. She gets pregnant from a car. It's so bizarre, like I said. It's so crazy. But I'm telling you, if you're into, like that darker side of cinema, like not darker, but like that really weird, and you've seen a lot of movies, and you sort of like when stories get really crazy, Titane is that movie. And if you're a fan of Raw, you will be sure to enjoy this. And for me, I didn't really expect it to crack my top 10, but just so happened to be like that, and I do think it deserves it. Coming at number 9 now, I have Pig, starring Nicolas Cage. And I've been a fan of Nicolas Cage, pretty much my whole life. As a kid, you grew up with National Treasure. As I got older, I looked at more of his 90s stuff, his early 90s stuff, like Face Off, Con Air, The Rock, all those. And, nowadays, he's done a lot of really weird, sort of obscure films. You've got Mandy, Color Out of Space, Willy's Wonderland also came out of this year. Really wacky sort of B movies that directors have brought Nicolas Cage on a star in just to give their movies some more name value. And for Pig, I was expecting more of the same, but it subverted all my expectations in the best way possible. Nicolas Cage puts on probably the best performance I've ever seen him in. It's a very quiet performance as someone steals his truffle pig, and it's sort of a revenge story, but without any of those revenge elements that you'd expect out of a revenge film. Every time you think that Nicolas Cage would, act out, does his normal things like he screams, maybe go after someone, he doesn't do that. He's much more reserved and quiet. And that performance mixed with Alex Wolff's performance, which was also really good, it just brought this very comforting feeling. While I was watching this movie in the theaters, it was like having a warm blanket over me, just watching Nicolas Cage back on the screen, putting on an actual great performance in a good film. It was astounding. It was so much fun to watch. And by the end, it left such a good message by the end that really stuck with me like hours after the film. And that is what I look for in film, a message that resonates with me even hours after it ended. So Nicolas Cage's Pig, so happy he made my top 10. It's definitely one to watch. Coming in now, number 8, I have Judas and the Black Messiah. This film was sort of falling on the back end of a lot of people's lists. I think because it came out earlier this year in like February. It already got some of these Oscar nods as Daniel Kaluuya won the best actor Oscar. And that's the main reason why this film was so good, because of his performance. And not only him, but also Lakeith Stanfield puts on an almost equally good performance. There's a time where I thought maybe he would be the one that would win and over Daniel Kaluuya. But Kaluuya was great. The story of watching Lakeith Stanfield be an informant for Jesse Plemons' character, the FBI. I love those type of movies. I'm a big crime drama guy. And to mix this crime drama with like a historical period piece, It was really well done. I'm also a sucker for those type of movies that show us, what the police department was like in the 70s. See some like the corruption and all this stuff that was going on. I love this type of movies. Judas and the Black Messiah was just what I wanted it to be. And I know a lot of people may have forgotten about it, but another one I'm really happy to see made my top 10. Coming in number 7, I have The Mitchells vs. the Machines. The studio that brought us Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is back again. And Sony's animation is so well done. It's sort of like this clean but messy look. I really love it. And the story here was so good. For me, this is the family-friendly movie of 2021. It's a story about this girl who wants to go into film school, something that I personally could relate to a lot as she's into film, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are into movies as well. So we have a really relatable character thrown into a family that, the father doesn't really believe in her. He wants her to be realistic, start to do other things. Well, she wants to just make movies, and she's all goofy and stuff. I thought it was so much fun. So you have like this really good family message in the backdrop of what is, an apocalypse movie about AI taking over the world and killing all the humans. And now we have this one family that's left to save the world. Such a fun time. It's not only funny, emotional, and the music is great. And it's something that I think we should expect now from these Sony animation movies. I know Spider-Verse is coming up next. But honestly, whatever they do now, I'm going to be super excited for, because Mitchells vs. Machines has proved that Sony animations can be just as good as some of the big ones like Pixar or DreamWorks. Coming in number 6, I have A Quiet Place Part 2. When I first saw The Quiet Place, the first one, I always thought it was okay. When I watched it recently, I was like, okay, never mind. This movie is going to be a classic. The first Quiet Place will go down as a classic. Not only what it did for sound, but I do think the actual movie and the story is so well done. And A Quiet Place Part 2, I don't think is better than the first, but it comes pretty darn close. It was one of the first movies I saw going back to theaters during COVID. Again, the sound is a standout. The story, I think, is not better, but I think it's really well done, because in the very beginning, we have one of the best openings to a movie that we got this year with that flashback scene. I thought that was really cool. And we get to see that the aliens aren't the only problem in this world. The humans start to go up against other humans. We get to see like what other people are doing besides this family. We bring in Cillian Murphy. I don't think his character was too great, but he brings a lot to the movie, a lot more heart as we see what happens to his family. I thought that was really well done. And honestly, this was one where I kind of wanted to rewatch before I made this list, but I didn't get to. Because, when I look back at it, I'm like, was Quiet Place Part 2 really that good? Does it deserve to be number 6 on this list? And right now, I'm going to trust my rating system, and I'm going to stick with it here at number 6. But I wouldn't be surprised if I come back and maybe this one might be knocked off the top 10. But for right now, I'm okay with it. Coming in number 5, I have Spencer. So Spencer is a story about Princess Diana and what may have happened to her in her last moments before her death. And so I'm from America. I'm not too knowledgeable of what happened to Princess Diana. I've heard the rumors of what might have happened, how her family may have taken her out because she doesn't conform to the traditions of the family. And that's portrayed in this movie. And so first off, Kristen Stewart's performance was amazing. I've seen the real footage of Princess Diana. Kristen Stewart is able to portray her mannerisms, her accent, very well done. She embodies that character. It's almost like she was born to play this character in a way. And so her performance is a standout already. Then you have some technical brilliance from the movie, like the filmmaking, the atmosphere of the movie, the costume, the production design. Some of that stuff was really well done, and I appreciated that. My favorite part, or the favorite aspect of this movie, was the psychological horror elements to it. It sort of is a little bit creepy and scary at times as we get to be put in the shoes of Princess Diana and what her mindset was. And just the experience of this movie was great. I loved being put in her shoes, seeing what her mindset was, how she wanted to go up against these traditions of the royal family, to see how other people may have viewed her and how she viewed them. Just very, very sophisticated yet entertaining movie. And like I said, Kristen Stewart deserves to win the Oscar for this. If she doesn't, I will be pretty mad. Coming in number 4, I have The Green Knight. This movie, when I saw it in theaters, it was one of my favorite movie experiences of 2021. It's just one of those films where you get hypnotized. You get put into a trance when you're watching it. The movie just starts and you're just like locked in. And the movie is like pretty long. I think it's just over 2 hours. And it just went by so fast. I thought it was so well done. Another one where it's technically brilliant. Some of the best cinematography of this year David Lowery, the director, creates an atmosphere that is almost like addicting. Like I want to go back into that world so badly. I'm a big fan of fantasy. I'm a big fan of medieval times. So the traditional Knight's Tale of this movie was something I was a big fan of. You have Dev Patel, who is also really great in this movie acting-wise. And he's the nephew of King Arthur. And you have this Green Knight come in based on the true myth or the true legend, right? Well, not true, but based on the legend of this story. And the Green Knight comes in, challenges him to a duel. You gotta meet me back at my place. And it's his journey of getting there, his journey of getting back. It was so good. I want to rewatch it right now because I do think maybe it deserves to be a little bit higher on this list. My only real negatives with the film is that I think in the middle, it did slow down, and there's a couple scenes I felt were a little bit like unneeded. But that first half was amazing, and then the way it ended, a memorable, great ending that I really enjoyed. So this will be one that I'm going to be rewatching for a very long time. I can't wait to watch it again, and it deserves to be maybe a little bit higher on this list. Coming in number 3, this is where I have Spider-Man No Way Home. I know a lot of you guys were probably wondering where this was going to land. Was it going to be number 1? I think it could have been at number 1 if I rewatched it. It's one of those movies where I think it did get better the more I thought about it after I've already seen it. Like the next morning, you're thinking about the movie, thinking about like how some of the ending, what it meant to that character, and it did resonate with me really hard. I was always a Tobey guy growing up, but honestly, I can't argue with the Tom Holland fans now. I may turn into Tom Holland as the best Spider-Man guy when it's all said and done, because what this movie did with that character is something I've been wanting MCU to do with Spider-Man for ever since he came in. I want a real character depth, some more trauma, some more growth from the Spider-Man. I didn't want him to be a kid anymore. I want him to grow up. And that's what this movie does. It puts him in a lot of hard situations where he's got to make a lot of tough choices, and he comes out of it, And this is, I guess, a spoiler for No Way Home, but I know everyone's seen it probably by now. But it was so well done. It's not only just fan service and all that stuff. Cinematography is also... There were some great shots in this movie that I wasn't expecting. John Watts made an actual really well-made film that I wouldn't be surprised if it gets some Oscar nods. I'm not against it for this movie. And Tom Holland, like I said, his performance was really well done. All the other side characters, how everything played in together. My only negative with this one is that, for the first half of the film, I wasn't really feeling it that much. That's why it's not number 1. I thought some of the comedy aspects weren't all there for me, and we didn't really get into the thick of the story until halfway through. That's why I don't think it's not where I want it to be. But honestly, it blew away all expectations. Love the inclusion of all the old villains, and this is maybe the best Spider-Man film of all time. I'm not ready to say it yet, but anyone that does say it, I can't argue with you. At number 2, I have Zack Snyder's Justice League. I went back and forth between this movie and Spider-Man No Way Home at number 2. I didn't know what to choose. I kept going back and forth. At the end of the day, I trust my ratings again. I did rate Zack Snyder's Justice League a little bit higher. That's probably because the freaking movie's 4 hours long, so there's more time to put in a bunch of stuff, a bunch of juicy stuff. And before the MCU really started going, before I was like a diehard fan around like Civil War, I was always a DC guy. Batman was always my guy. Superman always grew on me. I loved the DC world a lot more because I grew up with more DC stuff. I grew up with the animated series. Marvel wasn't a big thing for me until Iron Man. So seeing what Warner Brothers has done with the DCEU has been really upsetting for me. How they treated, Zack Snyder and all this other stuff. I wasn't a big Snyder fan. I wasn't advocating for this movie. I was like, okay, yeah, I want it, but like, is it really going to happen? So when we finally got that first trailer, I was like, all right, I'm hyped now. And the movie blew away all expectations. Yes, the core story is still there, but they add so much more stuff. Snyder adds, first he takes away all the dumb jokes. He takes away the color palette, the dumb redness and everything else. And he makes the film feel more DC. It's more gritty. It's not as flamboyant and mainstream as Joss Whedon's film was. So not only that, Cyborg literally becomes a nobody in the original movie to maybe the most important character in Zack Snyder's movie. I loved all the scenes with him. You have Steppenwolf. He gets so much more character depth. We get to know so much more about his motive. The inclusion of Darkseid was so badass. And how it all comes together at the end. Just so many epic moments that I've been waiting for. Like, this was what I wanted from DC. That grittiness, that darkness, that realness to it. And the inclusion of Darkseid and like what's to come. The amount of hype that I felt once the movie was over, I was like, I need to see more. You can't just end it here like this, especially with the nightmare scene. and seeing, bad Superman, you got Joker talking to the Batman, and a dialogue that was some of the best dialogue between Joker and Batman in like movie history. It was so great. It had everything I could have wanted from a DC film. It was amazing. I hope we get to see more, maybe one day, probably not, but I can't deny Zack Snyder's Justice League, even though it's super long. Last thing I want to say before we move on to number one. Yes, movie's 4 hours long. I literally thought after I watched it, I'm like, okay, can this movie really, still hold, can it really have rewatchability, after this? Because it is so long. So that same day, I literally went home and watched it again. I rated it the same. I still loved it. So I'm fine with keeping it here number 2 because it really is that good. And now coming at number 1, I have Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve is slowly becoming one of my favorite directors of all time. He's directed some of my favorite movies like Prisoners, Sicario, Arrival, Incendies, Blade Runner 2049, literal masterpieces. And Dune Part 1 is right up there with those. It may be a little bit, worse, but only because it's the first part. And why this is number 1 for me is because I am such a huge sci-fi guy. As you guys might have seen in my channels, I cover Invasion, some other things. Sci-fi is sort of my thing in a lot of ways. It's the one thing that I resonate with the most for some reason. Some of my favorite movies of all time is sci-fi. That's why I love Star Wars. 2001: A Space Odyssey. And when sci-fi is done right for me, it can feel so good. And that's what Dune did. The scale and the world building that Denis Villeneuve creates with Dune was something I don't even know if I've ever seen before. There are some shots in here that make the world seem so big and so real that it took my breath away. And even when I watched it at home on HBO Max, I have a pretty big screen, pretty big sound system I can use. Just the sound, being immersed in a movie like that it's very rare. It doesn't come often. And I think Dune just hit all the right spots with me. The characters were great. The lore, I never read the book, but I just started reading it after I saw the movie. And I see that George Lucas definitely got a lot of inspiration from the Dune book. And just the lore of the voice and prophecies and the chosen one, I eat that shit up. I love that stuff, and that's why I love Star Wars, because it sort of resembles the same sort of plot in a lot of ways. And, there's a lot of great moments in here, character depth, but on a technical level, it's also one of the best made films of 2021. So when you mix that technical brilliance of Denis Villeneuve with sci-fi epicness, with a sense of intensity and excitement that comes with this story, that is what mixed together for me to create what is my favorite movie of 2021. This year was so great for movies, especially last year in 2020, which I think was also a great year, very underrated. But it was during the pandemic, we were sort of delayed for a lot of movies. We were a little kind of starved for some those big box office movies that we missed out on last year. So for this year, we got so much. There's some great movies out there. So let me know down below, what was your favorite movie of 2021? I will also be doing an Instagram post tomorrow looking at my top 20 movies. So if you want to look at that, go follow me on Instagram, The Cinema Review. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to like it. Please make sure to subscribe if you're new. And I will see you on the next video. Catch you in the next one. Have a great rest of the day.